heart, they listen to their conscience. Your conscience and your integrity are connected together. So let's first read a few verses about integrity. Then we'll come to understand that third book called the book of God's reason within us. Can we read these verses? Those of you can read. The first is Psalm 78 to 71. What does it say? And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, with skillfulness of hands he led them. He's talking about leading with the integrity of heart. The other scripture is Job 2:9. Job's wife said to him, are you still holding on to your integrity? That is Job. Then Psalms 25. May integrity and uprightness protect you. There's a protection that comes with integrity. Can you move on to the next verse, the scripture, as I read? Those are not just scriptures we are going to continue. In my integrity, you uphold me and set me in your presence forever. Integrity upholds us. I know, my God, that you test the heart and you're pleased with integrity. So God is pleased when people walk with integrity. The integrity of the man of integrity walks securely, but he who takes crooked path will be found out. You know, when you are not walking with integrity, every time you see somebody with a tie and a suit and a file, you think these are auditors. Now you so, but the one, but the one who walks with integrity is secure. He doesn't mind because he has nothing to hide. So they walk securely. Continue. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Righteousness guards the man of integrity, but wickedness overthrows the sinner. They came to Jesus and said, Teacher, we know you are a man of integrity. Now, those are just enough scriptures for those who are sufficiently interested to study this topic. Now, you move on to the next one because I want to now define integrity. This is living. Living with integrity is living by your conscience. Violating your conscience continually weakens its voice. Now I'm getting to walking with integrity and walking with your conscience. Your conscience is the part in you that tells you that is wrong, that is right. Don't do that. Take back that balance. That is somebody's wife. And of course you know it. That's why we make the call at night. Why at night? Because you know that is not that is somebody's what? Wife. And your conscience is telling you that is not what? Right. Take back the balance. Those kind of things. Don't take that money. Your conscience is always shouting. When you are doing something, the wrong thing for the first time, it shouts loud. Loud. You really can't even get peace. But you can drown it. You can violate it. You can silence it. You have power to do that. But when you violate your conscience continually, you weaken that voice. Take a young child or a young man who is doing something wrong for the first time. They can't even get peace. A young lady who is going out eloping with a boy for the first time, they can't get peace. When they go and do it, the whole night they are disturbed. If they do the second time, the third, the fourth, now they are... The voice has become less and less and less. And they say, I've done nothing. So now they are used, the voice has been silenced and violated. And so that's how evil takes root in people's life. Initially, everybody knows this is wrong, this is right. But when you continually violate your conscience, that voice becomes less and less and less. And finally, you start to do it without any feelings. So, after some time, that conscience gets sedated or seared. Can you pinch your palm like this and see? Compare that with your under the arm here. Which one is more sensitive? Under the arm or here? Why is this not very painful? Why is this insensitive? That is what it means to be seared. You've banged the tables. Some of us who grew up in the villages, we used our hands to dig. And so after a while, there's not much, this part here. In Uganda, we call it okuguba. Okukola chi? Okuguba. How do you call it in other languages? Okuguba. Okuguba. So what do you call it in your language? Okuguba. So it's no longer sensitive. Your conscience can become like this. Initially, it's like this, very sensitive to any wrongdoing. You are sensitive. You are, you feel bad. You take the bribe the first time. Do you remember the first time? You didn't sleep. You had no peace. You felt, I've been living. Now look at what. Now the whole night, the whole morning, the whole next day, 2 days, 3 days, a whole week. When you take it the second time, the voice is less. The third time, the voice is less, and after a while, it's now normal. Toko teka kintu kidogo here. It's no, you are so strong, you are so confident, because the voice is no longer there. And now, what has happened to the conscience? Eh? That's what has happened to the conscience. It is now sedated. When you take somebody to hospital for operation, they apply chloroform. Do I call it chloroform? Yes, the senses are there, the 5 senses. Seeing, hearing, tasting, all the senses are there, but they're as good as what? Dead. The person is there, you know, he's not dead, but the senses are not what? Working. So that's what happens to your conscience. It is there, but it's as good as what? Now, do you have your pen? Yeah? Can you use your pen? Don't test yours. Test your neighbor's conscience with that pen at the thermometer and see, is your conscience still, or is it dead and is it sedated? Okay. So, your conscience should be sharp. Should be very sharp. When you retain its sensitivity, it is very sharp. The slightest thing. So that is sensitivity. But also God gave us that conscience for something else. Something else. That conscience, when it remains sensitive, it feeds on the other part which I mentioned, your intuition. You are sitting in a taxi in the taxi park. You are going to Masaka. You just feel something. No, something is wrong with this taxi. So you move to the next one. So you don't take that taxi. You take the second one. As you get to where is it? Kayabwe. I was looking for a town in. You get to Kayabwe, you find the taxi you were sitting in has had an accident. So how did you know? How did you know this taxi was going to have an accident? Something within you. So all of us have that something. Kindly tell your neighbor you have that something within you. It is you who has been silencing it and wasting. But that something is always there. It is every day, it is there. It is intended to warn you of danger. It is supposed to protect you when somebody is coming with a wrong deal. You end up buying air. You buy land and you have bought what? Air. Anybody who bought air, don't put up your hand. What happened is that that voice had been what? So it could not be a sure guide. So when your conscience is constantly violated, it loses that sensitivity. You can't sense danger anymore. Normally, our wives are more sensitive in that area. Do we agree with that? Wives, clap for yourselves. Because our wives come and tells us, that guy, I don't know him, but I know something is wrong with that. What? Men, has your wife ever said that? Hey, that man, I don't know. But for me, I've never seen him. But the moment I saw him, now what they're talking about is their what? Their conscience, that intuition in them tells them there is a problem with that guy. And that is the reason why your conscience is very important. Now, when we maintain our conscience and sensitivity, and we do not violate it, it becomes a very sure guide in everything you do, even in the slightest issues of life, in family, in children, where you take your children, when you are going to make major decisions, your conscience becomes a big, 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 important part of your guidance. Now, once it becomes seared and sedated, then this is what causes corruption in society and public office. when the conscience of people is constantly violated, not just here in the office of the DPP, but all the other offices. You sit in a taxi, the policeman stops you, stops the taxi, and then what the driver does, he does not stop where he is. He stops a little bit ahead. Have you seen that? Yeah? Then the conductor runs back. And it takes a lot of time. And then the people in the taxi say, give him, you know what he needs. Give it to him so that we do what? Have you had such thing like that? That is the sedated conscience of a society which has accepted corruption as normal, and when you don't do it, we are the abnormal. Yeah? So the taxi, the passengers keep telling, "Go tomanyi, go tomanyi chakola." Have you had it said in your office? Tomanyi chakola. Now, when you start, for you, when you don't do what everybody else is doing, you start to become the old man or the old woman out. Because now the whole society has accepted this as no. Now, that kind of talk is telling you that for you, you seem to have insisted on living your conscience when all of us have allowed it to get what? Sedated. Okay, continue. So to effectively fight corruption, we have to sharpen the societal what? Conscience again. And it starts with you and I, who are serving the public in the public office. The conscience has to fortunately, you can go back and your conscience can be, even if it has gotten sedated, just like a sick person. After they come out of the operation room, then the chloroform has gone, and then they go back to normal. That we do through our repentance, and you say, no, you know what? After that meeting, I'm not going to violate my conscience again. I'm going to do what is right, and I'm not going to succumb to the pressures of everybody else. For me, I will be different. Can you please continue? Okay. We refuse to take bribes because our conscience tells us that what we are doing is what? Is wrong. And we obey the conscience. You don't steal because the inner voice tells you it is wrong. Employees submit to their bosses and file monthly reports on time because they obey the voice of their conscience. Continue. You observe the speed limit and traffic light. This is a very difficult one, especially the speed limit. How many have a problem with the speed limit? Because we spend a lot of time in the jam. So when you get the slightest, you want to catch up. So this is a very difficult one. You don't fear of being arrested, but because your voice, the voice of your conscience tells you that is the right thing. You declare and pay the right taxes when under declaring would have been convenient, and it makes better economic sense for you personally and your business. But you say, no, for me, I will declare the right figures. You are punctual at work and keep time because it is what? Right. Anybody who is very punctual here? None? Oh, your conscience is really being sedated. Okay, now let's go back to this. Now look at that part, the one I was talking about. So you have those three parts. In the book of Thessalonians, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, he mentions those three parts. May your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless. Okay? So you see you have a body, that is the part which is sitting on the chair. You have the soul where your mind is, your imaginations are, that is the soul. But the part of the spirit, that is the one I'm talking about. It is hidden inside you. When you die, it is your spirit and your soul that leave your body and they go. The part they take to bury is the body. It's not the real you. That is the part that lives here. It was got from the soil. Well, that's why we say, etakamataka, emfufu, eh? Have you heard us when we are burying? Because that part comes from the what? Kindly tell your neighbor, I know you look very beautiful, but this is mere soil. Okay? However much you look... So, and also remind her that I know you spend 2 hours in the mirror, but you are just looking at soil. 2 hours in the mirror, but you are just looking at the soil. This is not the real you. And for some people, all their money Every income they have, they spend it on the what? And very soon it will start to have what? Wrinkles, whether you like it or not. You fight, you put paste, you put, what do you call it? Makeup, but if at a certain time, even if you put there, people start to see, at this again. Now that, it doesn't matter how much you fight it, that soil will quickly start to show. Okay? So, but that is not the real you. The real you is the part inside you, the spirit and the what? The soul. Unfortunately, if you are born in places like Bukunja, have you heard of Bukunja? When they bury you there, if that is where you come from, within a week, a few days, what will happen to that body? It will be eaten. So, it will be eaten. Yes, some of you are not aware, we have a place here in Buikwe district, a place called Bukunja, where they eat dead bodies. And the villagers, when they see you being taken back to your ancestral home, they are very, very happy. In Uganda, we have a saying, because they know they have supper now. Supper will be very delicious because they have buried somebody in the village. I can see you, you are very, very scared now. But don't worry, because the real you is not that body. Kindly remind your neighbor, this is not the real you. The real you is the other part, your spirit and your what? Your soul. That is the real you. So spend a little less more now on this body and spend it on the what? The inside. Don't violate your conscience, because that is part of you now. That is the part which will continue long after you've left here. Now look at the way Jesus mentioned all those three when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. It says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He said to them, stay here and keep watch. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is what? Do you see all the three? Verse 34, there is the soul. Verse 38, there is the spirit, and then there is the what? The body. Those are the three parts that make you. You are the three. Now, when you go to university, you study the body biology. That is the study of the what? Yes. But you also can study the mind and all that. They call that psychology. It comes from the Greek word psyche. Psyche. But in university, you call it psychology, meaning study. But you don't have a study of the spirit there. They don't talk about it. They don't quite understand it. So I'm giving you now a postgraduate course in the study of the spirit. So can we move to the next slide now? That's how it looks like. That inner part there, it is called the spirit, where it has three parts: intuition, communion, and what? Conscience. Intuition is the antenna, and I've put them there. Intuition is the antenna. It's like when you have a radio and you want it to catch the network, the network is caught by your intuition. Communion is the part in you which worships God. And the conscience is the part which tells you this is right, this is wrong. So those are the three parts in your spirit. Each affects the other. You see people, you go with them to a place of worship. Others are worshiping God, and for them they're just standing like this because they're disconnected. All along the whole month they have been violating their conscience. So when they get to service, they can't feel any presence of God. Did you see when these people were worshiping here? Did you see any of your neighbors who are just there? And so that part called communion is like dead there. But even when the others are really lost, oh Lord, you're so good. They just say, these people. So that the problem is the communion has been affected because they have been violating their what? Their conscience. When you violate the conscience, even the other two parts become insensitive. You can't feel God. Others want to hear from God. Want to pray so that God can also speak to what? To me. And you wonder you have to fast for 21 days to even hear a whisper. The problem is that you have been violating the what? The conscience, and the voice is so, yes, it's so dull, you can't get it. So that is the point. And when you make a decision, say, no, I'm not going to violate my conscience. I'll live by my conscience, and you can't start all over again. That is the good thing with our God. Okay? So please continue. Now, concepts that build great nations. When Europe went back to the importance of conscience, it changed Europe 500 years ago. And it started when Martin Luther was standing before the Diet of Worms, that is the council that was interviewing him. They said, for 1,000 years, the church has written all this. How come you are saying something contrary? Are you ready to recant? He said, no. I'm bound to my conscience. I know this is right, and unless you convince me by scriptures and reason, I can't, because my conscience tells me so. That, for the first time, the conscience of people became a very, very important issue of study. In England, the Parliament asked Westminster Assembly to come up with some teaching on the conscience, because people will stand before God and they will be judged by their conscience. They will not be judged by what the majority said. They will be judged by their what? Now, that is a very, very important part. In that time, the battle was very intense. Some of you know history. There were very, very many battles that were fought along those lines. But to cut the long story short, going back to asking people to live by their conscience was very important in building the moral fabric of the society. Europe was as corrupt as we are. Many of the people were. But when the church and the people started to teach the conscience, telling them that one day you'll stand before God to answer by your what? Your conscience. Have you read that part where it says when we stand before the Lord, books will be opened? Have you read that? So